How many people are there?
Sir, 35 are there, sir. We can. Yes.
Right. Okay, why don't you identify a few people who can, in case some questions are there, some people can answer. Meanwhile, I'll get my slide on the screen.
Okay, sir.
Sir, good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah, good afternoon.
Sir, last time we are going to discuss about the dysplastic pulmonary valve, how it looks on angio, sir.
Yes.
That was remaining.
Yeah, who is speaking?
So, Dr. Abhijit, sir.
Abhijit. Okay, good. Tell us what is the difference between.
So,
In fact, if you
mainly,
want, I can open that angio again so that you can compare also. 1 second. Let me see if I have the angio here. Okay.
okay, sir.
Yeah, I think I have the angio here. Okay, this is the one we discussed, if you remember.
Yes, sir.
Lateral view RV angio. Oops, sorry, 1 second. Okay, this is the view. So RV angio, then we thought there is thickening and doming of the pulmonary valve, and then there is a narrow jet here. Then we thought dynamic obstruction in the infundibulum. Yeah. Then I wanted to ask: is this classical valvular PS, or there is a condition called dysplastic valve? You know, dysplastic valve can occur in Noonan syndrome and in some other condition typically. So, what is the difference between classical valvular PS and dysplastic pulmonary valve? Yeah, go ahead, Amit. No, who is Abhijit? Sorry, Abhijit.
Yes, sir. So basically, dysplastic pulmonary valve stenosis is due to myxomatous thickening of leaflets, and there is usually there will be no commissural fusion, and they are like poorly mobile leaflets.
Okay.
And it the dysplastic pulmonary valve will be associated with supravalvular narrowing, sir. There the ring will be hypoplastic.
Which what ring?
Valve ring, sir. Valve ring.
Annulus. It's called annulus, not ring.
Annulus. And there will be absent.
Only artificial valves are called ring. Natural valve we call it annulus.
Yes, sir. And there will be absent post-stenotic dilatation of pulmonary arteries, sir.
Okay.
Dysplastic pulmonary valve.
Look at this angio and tell me, is this dysplastic or not?
So here, sir, we can see the post-stenotic dilatation. Then we can see clearly a doming of. Then the valve annulus is looking okay.
Good.
I cannot see here commissural fusions.
See, commissural fusion. Have you ever seen in a valve?
No, sir. No.
Then why do you say I don't see commissural fusion? How do you make out commissural fusion in mitral valve?
Mainly, sir, on echo, sir.
How?
In parasternal short axis view, sir.
No.
At the level of.
In the long axis view, how do you make out whether there is commissural fusion or not?
Long axis.
Anybody else?
The presence of doming itself suggests that there is commissural fusion.
Yeah, doming means what? Doming means the two leaflets are fused with each other. This leaflet is fused with this leaflet. That is why they are not separating out. They are forming a tent. In mitral valve, it also domes. Hockey stick appearance. What is hockey stick appearance? Yes, hockey stick appearance is commissural fusion. Can't you see the hockey stick appear?
Yes, there is. Yes.
So, There is commissural fusion. You are seeing commissural fusion. Why do you say commissural fusion is not there? So this valve dysplastic or not?
No, sir. This is suitable for PP.
So a classical valvular PS is generally due to commissural fusion of the leaflet. Even here there is some thickening, but the thickening is not very much, and the valve remains mobile. Mobile cardiac cycle. Can't you see this leaflet is moving up and down? It is restricted by commissural fusion. Otherwise, the body of the leaflet is moving. So it is a mobile valve. Thickening is not too much. The annulus is quite good size, and there is post-stenotic dilatation. A dysplastic valve, the valve will not have any commissural fusion. There, the stenosis is because the valve is so thick and immobile. Without commissural fusion, but the valve cannot move at all. So you won't see the doming at all, first of all. Immobile valve, often it is associated with hyperplastic annulus, and very often you don't, and then you don't get post-stenotic dilatation. So the applied importance is
for BPV, sir.
BPV. So dysplastic valve is not suitable for balloon pulmonary valvotomy generally. And what else is important? What is the other applied importance of dysplastic valve?
Usually they are associated with other anomalies, sir.
Never say other anomalies. Please tell one or two quickly. So don't say other anomalies.
So sometimes with HOCM or
Noonan, it is most common associated Noonan syndrome. The Noonan syndrome can have cardiomyopathy, very commonly hypertrophic cardiomyopathy.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that's all you should say. That's all I wanted. So so that way we have revised a little short bit of dysplastic valve also.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So are we ready to go?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Let me identify, sir. Deepti, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Deepti?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Then you can get Anupa Mahajani, you're there? Then Radha?
Yeah,
and
Nikhil, I'm here.
Wasim. Yeah, okay. Wasim? Wasim, you there? Okay. I don't know who is this. One second, sir. Vamsi, you are there? Vamsi?
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay, sir. So Vamsi, Radha, and Deepti are there, sir.
Okay. Right. So today we are doing the third session of interactive angiography. In this session, I'm going to discuss three things. One is a few basics of image quality. We don't need to go into great detail of X-ray physics and all, but certain basic things you should know to be able to do angiography and interpret it effectively. One. Secondly, we will discuss how to image ventricular septal defect. And ventricular, see, I know you think Nikhil told me that you guys wanted congenital heart disease angio, because that is what you are not seeing frequently. But congenital heart disease, nobody is going to expect very complex heart disease from you. The common ones, you will, if you have to know the views and angios, and that VSD is probably the most common disease, and the next most common is tetralgia fallow. So VSD, tetralgia fallow, pulmonary stenosis are some of these angiograms you should be familiar with, views and other things. So let's do VSD and then RVPA so that it finishes VSD by itself and VSD as part of tetralogy fallow. Okay? Let's see if time permits, we can discuss something else also, a few angios. Right. Now, I have already discussed this point with you guys. All of you know that there is a difference between anteroposterior and posterior-anterior view in the X-ray chest. And in a AP view, the heart tends to be magnified. When the heart is closer to the source of X-rays and away from when the object of interest, in this case the heart, but when the heart or object of interest is closer to the source of X-rays and away from the X-ray plate, you get magnification. On the other hand, if this distance is longer and this distance is shorter, you get a true image of the heart size. You're familiar with this, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Hey, one of you should respond. Okay. Okay. Good. So now extending this to angiogram. So the same thing, magnification also occurs in angiogram, and very often you need measurement because you are planning to do a stenting, coronary artery stent. Do you put 2.5 millimeter stent or a 3 millimeter stent? Will you use a 10 mm VSD device or a 8 mm VSD device? Will you use what size valve balloon to use? So you need measurements, you have to know the size. So you have to know what are size. Now in X-ray, it is a X-ray source of machine and the X-ray plate. In the cath lab, it is replaced by certain other things. Now are you familiar with parts of a cath lab machine? Can somebody tell me all the parts here without reading this? What is the structure? Anyway, I'll tell you, it's all labeled already, so I don't point in asking you. Okay, so we have a source of X-rays, the X-ray tube, and then we have a series of filters and collimator, which basically you can reduce the size of the window here, and you can add filters so as to reduce the amount of X-rays coming. You can also reduce the field in which the X-ray is coming, the area of the X-ray exposure. X-rays go through the patient and it's picked up by the image intensifier. From there it goes through a camera lens and aperture, and it is recorded in a video or still frame, whatever it is. So those are the parts of a thing. Now in between there are certain other areas which we will discuss later, anti-scatter grid, and there are some more filters called the flaps here to reduce the field and area. These are the parts of the thing. So this is the source of X-ray as far as the chest X-ray image was concerned, and this is the equivalent to the X-ray film. So in magnification will be less if the distance between the image intensifier and the patient is less, and the distance from the X-ray tube and the patient is more. Okay, remember that always. So if the table is low and the image intensifier away from the patient, you can get a lot of magnification and distortion. Okay, you got it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, why does this magnification occur? Now, X-ray comes from one area on the X-ray machine, and then the X-rays, although we expect the X-rays to go parallelly, actually the X-rays always have a tendency to diverge. So, although when they begin they are nearly parallel, but as the distance increases, the X-rays go away from each other, and therefore the shadow of the object varies. If you have an object here closer to the source, one moment, just hold on. Okay. Okay, and so you can see that if the object is closer to the source, there will be more divergence after the object. Whereas if the object is close to the X-ray film, there is very little time, very little distance for it to diverge. Okay. Therefore, again, the distance from the source to the object and the distance from the object to the X-ray plate or cinefilm or image intensifier, this proportion is what matters for the degree of magnification. So there is a formula for correcting this also. So we have a FFD. FFD is focus. Focus is the source, X-ray focus. Focus to film distance. They called it film because X-ray plate, but you can call it image intensifier also. So focus to film distance The other one is focus to object distance. So the magnification can be calculated by the formula distance of FFD divided by FOD from focus to the object. That gives the magnification factor. So the image will magnify that much number of time from the true size to the image size. So you have to make a correction when you try to size a coronary artery for a stent. You have to do a correction. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, in addition, there is another type of distortion also takes place. When you have a X-ray, the center image in the center of the field. For example, when you do a coronary angio or a ventricular angio, you have got some structures in the center of the field, and you have got some structures. These are the two structures. This is a coronary artery in the center of the field. This is a branch of the coronary artery in the periphery, but they are both of the same size. Okay, this is one coronary artery and this is one coronary artery. Same size, the same patient. But you're doing an angiogram. You see the image cast by this, which is in the center of the field, it casts an image of this size. But when it is in the periphery of the screen, the image is distorted. Can you see that the image has become elongated, and you can see the X-ray beam like this, and you know that the shadow is not a true picture of this object. It has become elongated and distorted. So this is called peripheral distortion. So there is an element of magnification. First of all, this object is getting magnified to this. Even in a central image there is magnification. And the peripheral image is not only magnified, it is also distorted. The shape changes. What was a circular image has become like an egg here. And the more peripheral it is, the more distorted it is. So what is this called? There is a name given for it. Anybody knows? It's called pincushion distortion. Have you seen a pincushion? No, this is a pincushion where you stick all pins inside, and just imagine that you take a picture of this pincushion from the top. Okay, what will happen? All our pins are the same size, but this pin, the central pin, will all look like a thin, small circles. Whereas as you go to the periphery, you will find that the shadow will be like elongated shadows. So that's what happens in an image. The central image is true to shape but magnified, but the peripheral image is not only magnified, it's also distorted in shape. Now, is that important in your angiogram?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, very important, because those measurements, and we are interpreting coronary angiogram left and right for degree of stenosis and all that. So this is an example of how. So this is a metal grid of exactly all the squares exactly are of the same size. They are all same size, same shape, every square. But when you take a angiogram, this is what you get. Can you see the distortion? The centermost square is the true appearance of the square. Even that size may not be accurate, but the shape is accurate. But when you go to the periphery, look at this. Look at it, it's elongated like this. This is elongated like obliquely as well as like this. Do you understand what pincushion distortion is?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So we have a magnification, we have distortion. Then we have another problem is quality of image. Now between these two, why is one image is better than the other? Obviously, you can make out that this image is not as good as this one. Both are LAO, both are right coronary artery, and both are probably I don't know about more or less similar views, but slightly different degrees of LAO. Okay, so this angio is beautifully seen. Proximal coronary artery, mid coronary artery, even the terminal posterolateral branch, posterior descending, everything is seen beautifully, including the branches. Whereas the same type of injection in this view It is very well shown here, but this area is totally dark. You cannot make out the posterolateral branch. Even the terminal little part of the PDA we cannot make out. So obviously this angio is much better than this one. There's something different. There's something. Now have a good look at the picture, and we'll come back to that later. Another example. Again, LAD in RAO view. Two angiograms. Both are LAD in RAO view. Now compare this view. Beautiful. Every detail is seen, and another patient of similar build, also seen, but this, I'm not talking of the relatively grey appearance. That is not what I am talking. Can you see this vessel is hazy, and the branches are much. Here the branches are crystal clear. Margins are easy to measure. These margins are not clear. Okay. So why is one image better than the other? Can anybody tell me? It's not due to body weight and all that. Don't tell me all that. Contrast injected, body weight and all that. Those are all equalized. Okay, I'll give you one more example. Then you may be able to example.
Sir, shutters.
What shutters?
One is magnified, another one is known.
No, they are not magnified. They are the same, almost the same size. They are different patients. Therefore, they look a little different. But otherwise, they are the same size. They are not
Collimation
magnified.
of views.
What is collimation?
Different.
Okay, tell me what is the difference between these two. This is the heart I was teaching you last week, and the same heart. I've got two pictures here. Somebody is holding the heart for me in the hand, and that also tells you the relative size of that model. So you get an idea of the size. Okay. Now I've taken two pictures, same view, the same room, the light. I didn't change anything else. Only the position I changed, and maybe the background is different. That's all I changed. Why is this image so clear, beautiful? And why is this image not good? Can somebody tell me? In fact, there is more light from the window here. This is actually the window. There's actually more light here. The light was less here compared to here.
Background scatter.
Scatter is used for radiation, not for light.
Shutter speed, sir.
Shutters, what shutter? See, you can't just throw these terms at me and expect me to accept it. Tell me, somebody said collimator, somebody said shutters. What do you mean by shutter speed? You have to adjust the shutter speed, you mean? That's what you mean? How do you adjust shutter speed? Have you done it in your cath lab? Come on, guys. Nobody in your group is interested in photography? Anybody has a SLR camera? Anybody interested in photography?
The aperture is open for a longer time in the picture on the left, sir. So there is more light coming in. Whereas on the right side picture, the aperture is not open for a longer time.
You have to explain that a little better. That's a very crude explanation. Okay, so let me explain to you. See, most of the cameras nowadays are automatic. You don't have to set the shutter speed and aperture and all that. Have you ever set an aperture in your cath lab? Don't talk about aperture and shutter speed and all. Nobody sets it. It's all automatic. Automatic exposure. Like your cell phone, do you ever set aperture and speed for that? It's all automatic cameras. But the automatic camera has a photocell. It judges the amount of light coming into the field, from the field, and adjusts the amount of exposure. If it is getting less light, it will give a longer exposure, so you get better image. If there is too much light, it will give short. Okay, so but the cell has limited brains. It can only take the average of the light in the whole field. It cannot judge that this area is dark and this area is super bright. It cannot judge. It takes the average of the field and adjusts the exposure. Okay? So, what is the average here? Light, is there more light or less light? This window is so brilliant, the sun is outside, that the average light is much more than in the field. So average light more. Therefore, the camera thinks that there is too much light in this field, and it gives much less exposure, less duration of exposure. Okay, when it gives less duration of exposure, because it is setting value as for the bright light. And what is set for the bright light is not enough for the dark area. Therefore, on an average, it is considered a bright field and it gives an underexposure, and this gives a dark image. If you have a uniform degree of light throughout the field, the camera is very easy to judge the amount of light available. Here, all the shades are more or less similar. The amount of light is more or less same in all the areas of the field, and therefore the camera is able to set an average exposure time, and there you get a beautiful picture. So that's the difference between these two and these two. The background is unevenly lighted up. Background is unevenly lighted up. If you move this view to the other wall and get this window behind the camera, you will get a much better picture. Here the window is behind the camera and the object is getting uniform light on the background. Did you understand?
Yes, sir.
Come on, you take so long to say yes. Okay, so now let's go back to those angios. Look at these angios. This angio is so white here because the lung is giving white. So the camera thinks that the average amount of light is more than necessary. It sets the exposure for this area. As a result, this is underexposed. Can you see this area is all white, this area is dark. Therefore, the camera is confused. Whereas, if you have a field like this, it's more or less uniformly gray all over the background. I'm not talking of the coronary artery now. I'm talking of the background. It's more or less uniformly gray all over the place. You get a beautiful exposure. Now, how do you achieve this? You can change that little degree of you. See, there's nothing sacred about 60 degrees LAO or 65 degrees LAO. 60 degrees can be made into 55 degrees, nothing will happen. Cranial tilt from 20 degrees can be made into 25 degrees, nothing will happen, nobody is going to get upset. So, you move the degree of angulation, move the degree of obliquity, do something to make the background uniform. The other thing you can do is, can you see here? This area is totally white. Now, how do you get rid of that white? You put a flap. Can you see a triangular flap here? Can you see they have put a metal opaque plate here. It is part of the X-ray machine. You don't have to put it from outside. That is what I was telling you. There are additional flaps. So this white lung area is covered by a semi-translucent metal flap, and therefore the white area is converted into a gray area. Now the background is more or less uniform throughout the field. You agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Here it is more or less uniform around the field, whereas here it is not uniform. So you will never get a picture. So the summary of all the things that I have been telling you in the last 6 or 7 slides is, how do you get a good picture? For example, this is a lateral view of the left coronary angiogram. Normally you get always a white lung here, isn't it, in front of the in front and above the heart here. There's always a bit of white lung here. And even above the diaphragm, you get lung here. So they have put a flap. Can you see the triangular flap here? Can you see the border here like this, parallel to the diaphragm? This whole area has been covered by a flap. The whole area. So this flap makes sure that the background here and the background here are similar in density. So now the camera is able to set a proper field. So that is how you improve the quality of your image. So what are the things you have to make? How to make an image good? We are not going into high level physics here. Simple thing. The exposure is automatic, so you don't need to do anything to that. The background of the field should have a uniform radio density. So you adjust the degree of obliquity, you adjust the position of the patient, you adjust the collimator. The collimator is the hexagonal thing which reduces the total area of exposure around the heart. Filters and flaps, they selectively block. The collimator is the outer border, the whole square. Whereas the flap is the triangular one which you use for one corner. One corner here, you can use it, you can rotate it anywhere. You can bring it this side, you can bring it this side, and bring it here. Wherever necessary, you can bring it. So you have to adjust the whole thing in such a way that the background becomes uniform. In some patients, you will find that the diaphragm is causing a lot of darkness. In that case, you ask the patient to take a deep breath and hold it. If needed, you ask him to take a deep breath and hold it so that this area and this area becomes uniform in density. Simple. In obese people, it's a nuisance. Diaphragm being very high, it will create very poor images. So you ask the patient to deep inspiration and you will get beautiful images in deep inspiration. Other most important thing is always the object of interest should be in the center. If you are measuring a VSD, make sure that the object is as close to the center as possible. In a coronary artery, sometimes it's not possible, I know that. But what you do, if you have a difficult lesion and you want more detailed view of that, in that case you may have to center it before you take a angio. So any interesting object should be in the center of the field for measurement. If needed, take an inspiration and make sure that the background is uniform in density. Now you know how to get a good angio?
Yes, sir.
Have you been taught?
Yes, sir.
Are you people aware of this? Somebody has talked to you about it?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Right. Now, so now you know the various parts. X-ray. This is a collimator which controls the total area being exposed. Here. This flaps. You can selectively put it in this corner or this corner or this corner and bring it inside, go outside, whatever. There's the table. There is an anti-scatter grid. Now this we will talk later one day we will talk about radiation protection. That's also a very important topic. That's where we need that. We'll talk later. Image intensifier. So to get a good image, minimum size of the collimator, appropriate flap, appropriate degree of obliquity, the table as high as possible away from the X-ray tube, and image intensifier as close to the patient as possible. The object of interest should be kept in the middle of the field. Those are the guidelines for getting good images. Is that clear? Any doubt about that? Because now I'm going to the yeah.
Sir, is the X-ray APV which we take in the ward and in the cath lab are the same, or is there any difference?
No, they are different. Yeah, you are a good question. Normally, the AP and posterior-anterior view, we say from the point of view of entry of the X-rays into the body. Okay. Therefore, strictly speaking, the frontal view that we are doing in cath lab is actually a posterior-anterior view. No, wait. I'm right. Yeah, it is the same. And I'll go back to the picture. Wait. Yes. In a posterior-anterior view, X-rays are entering from the back and going, the film is in front. Sorry, it is the same. I made a mistake in that. Yes. Yes. Here the X-rays are also entering from the back and going to the film here. So it is the same. Frontal view is posterior-anterior view. Right?
So both are different, sir. Here the AP view is there, the PA view.
No. I'm saying PA view is what you get here.
Yeah, sir. So in the cath lab, what we are getting as a PA view is the in what we are getting as an AP view, right?
No. Why? That's what I'm asking.
Sir, in cath lab, our nomenclature is according to the image intensifier, no sir. So if the image intensifier in cath lab is in the anterior position, the view we say it's an AP view, no sir.
Correct. But that is
actually,
wrong. Actually, what you are getting is a posterior-anterior view of the heart.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
They call it anteroposterior view. Yeah. That's a misnomer. They call it anteroposterior view. They call it frontal and all that. But what you are getting is without magnification, you are getting a posterior-anterior view. Yeah, I agree. They label it as the AP view. I agree. That's a wrong thing. Actually, we should never write AP view. We should write frontal view. That is a better term. You are right. What you write as AP view in cath lab is actually a frontal view, which is equivalent to the posterior-anterior view of the X-ray. Am I clear?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes, and this is something everybody has to clear. What we are writing in AP in cath report is not AP view. Everybody understand this statement? If nobody,
Yes, sir.
Anybody doesn't understand, please put your mic on and ask. Okay, so we go on to the next topic now. Right, now, no, not next topic, we haven't finished this yet. Okay, this is a coronary angiogram. I want to stent this LAD. I told you how to correct for magnification. Now tell me how will I measure this and how will I get the proper size stent? How do I do it? I showed you magnification factor, image.
First we have to calibrate the image, sir.
What is that calibration?
Calibration, because we know the size of the catheter, and we have to mark the catheter in the image, and that is applied to the actual, that is equalized to the actual size of the catheter, and then depending upon all calibrations.
Okay. So there is what I taught you earlier is the magnification factor, no? Image, the source to film and source to object is the actual way of calculating magnification factor. But in a patient, when you are doing in the cath lab, you cannot measure the distance from the source to the left anterior descending artery. Is there any way you can measure it? You can't measure it. And is there any way you can measure the left anterior descending artery to the image intensifier? You cannot measure that. That is okay for a X-ray. But in a cine angiogram, you need some other way. So for that you need some marker. And this catheter, in this coronary angiogram, the catheter acts as a marker. But you can use any type of marker. A marker is an object whose size is known to you. It can be a tube like a catheter. It can be a square frame. I showed you one grid with 1 centimeter square grid. It can be a coin. It can be any object, diameter. You can put a pen, and if you know the diameter of the pen, you can use that as it should be in the approximate location of the object. So how is it corrected? If you know that the catheter or marker, whatever is 10 mm, when you take an image, you get it enlarges and it becomes 14 millimeters. Now, so that is the degree of magnification. Suppose I want to measure an object, a VSD for example. The VSD is 8 millimeter in diameter. So I want to know the actual size of this. Corrected dimension would be 8 multiplied by 10 upon 14. So 10 upon 14 is the ratio which corrects the 6. 8 will reduce to about 6 or 7, whatever it is. So because we do not have this ability to measure image to object distance in the cath lab in the live patient, what we do is we put a marker in the field and see the relative magnification. Now this magnification factor is the same as, actually it will work out to the same value as the image to object and object to film distance. The same formula but calculated in a different way from use of a known size marker. That's what is done in the cath lab. Now even the QCA which you use by the computer is also doing the same thing. First you have to trace the catheter and then it corrects for the magnification, gives the actual size of the artery. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, that's it about basic imaging. And now I'm going to go on to the angiography of VSD. Right. So this is the same model I'm coming back to. Now it's important to realize heart is a very complex structure, and it's lying somewhat horizontally in the chest like this. So when you do a left anterior angiogram view for VSD, you find that the septum is foreshortened. There's an anatomical position of the heart in the chest, and you're looking at it from the left anterior oblique view like this. And when you take away the ball, you see that the septum is seen here, but then you can see that this septum is foreshortened. If you have a VSD here and another VSD here, the image it will be overlapping. This VSD and this VSD would overlap each other. Therefore, you have to increase the length of the septum on the image. How do you do it? By giving cranial tilt. When you give a cranial tilt, you see the full length of the septum. In an anatomical view, doing straight LAO, what you get is a very foreshortened view of the septum, a very foreshortened view of the left ventricular outflow tract here. Okay. Therefore, we have to do a cranial angulation. Now, this shows the difference between LAO view with cranial angulation and without cranial angulation. Can you see the heart here is globular in shape? When you look at it from the LAO point of view, the heart is globular in shape. It's very short, not long. Now, there's a VSD, a very large VSD here. But the borders are indistinct, and if you have two VSDs in the mid septum and one again in the apical septum, you probably will overlap here. When you give cranial tilts, the heart looks more upright. It looks elongated, and you see the entire length of the septum. So that is the advantage of giving cranial tilt. So just like coronary arteries, you have to give tilt wherever necessary to profile the object. Now, this again shows the principle of cranial tilt. Here the heart is in the anatomical position, the septum is foreshortened. When you lift up the cranial end of the heart and as equivalent of the cranially LAO, can you see the septum is prolonged, the RV cavity is seen right till the apex, whereas here it is foreshortened, and you can see the apical septum, the mid septum, and the upper part of the septum. So one thing is to give different degrees of cranial tilt, the other thing is to do different degrees of LAO, and this slide I showed you last time. Different degrees of LAO, where shallow LAO where heart is equally on front and back of the spine, steep LAO where very little heart overlaps the spine, and extreme LAO or lateral where the heart has cleared the spine. So you can use different combinations of LAO and different combinations of cranial tilt to locate the VSD. Now the septum is a very complex structure. You see it's curving from behind, it comes like this, turns to the left, and goes all the way to the free wall. It also curves from superior to that, like in this direction. Multiple curves. It's a it's a S-shaped curve. Therefore, an angiographic view which will profile the VSD here will not profile the VSD here. Because for getting a profile, you have to be perpendicular to the jet, isn't it? In coronary artery, what do? You get best image when you are perpendicular to the coronary artery. Am I right? If you are parallel, if you are end on with the coronary artery, you won't see the stenosis. You have to be perpendicular. You have to look at it from the side. Therefore, a view which profiles this part of the septum will not profile this part of the septum. Therefore, you do different degrees of obliquity to profile that septum. In addition, if you look carefully, you see this septum is in one plane and this septum is in another plane. This is also septum and this is also septum. Now, when you do LAO angio or cranial view, this part of the septum is very well profiled. So if you have a VSD, you will see a jet going like this. You have mid-muscular VSD, you will see a jet going like this. Apical VSD, you will see a jet going like this. But if you have a VSD here, what will happen? It will overlap on the LVOT. The LVOT is here, right behind that. So you will have a VSD jet and you have a LVOT jet, one on top of each other. And therefore, you will not see the VSD jet at all. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
So, a supracrystal or a subpulmonic VSD cannot be profiled in LAO view. That is the message I am giving you. A subpulmonic VSD cannot be profiled in LAO view because it is overlapping the LVOT. Whereas VSD in the mid septum and other parts of the septum can be profiled in LAO view. So, all VSDs are not the same. You must know how to differentiate different VSDs. Now, this is again, I'm telling you the same. This is echocardiography. In fact, whenever I take classes on VSD anatomy, I always combine echocardiographic diagnosis with VSD diagnosis and angiogram. Because pediatric guys need both echo and angio. But echo, if I start discussing today, it will take an hour by itself. So I'm not discussing echoes today. But this echo tells you that complex curvature. The inflow part of the septum, the posterior part of the septum will be profiled in shallow LAO. This arrow. The mid part of the septum, the perimembranous septum, the subaortic septum, will be best profiled in the steep LAO. Whereas the outflow portion of the septum, the subpulmonic septum, anterior muscular septum, will not be profiled in LAO at all. It is profiled at right angles to the LAO. It is profiled best in RAO. Can you understand now?
Sir, once again, can you repeat, sir?
See, how do you see a VSD jet? You will see a VSD jet going across the septum like this, isn't it? So you have to profile it when you do an angiogram. So a VSD in the posterior part of the septum or the inflow part of the septum will profile best in shallow LAO. I'll tell you again, I'm going to discuss it again later. When you come to the mid portion of the septum, that is the perimembranous and subaortic VSDs, it is best profiled in steep LAO. And when you come to the outflow portion, subpulmonic septum, it is best profiled in RAO view. Now you can see it here. If I'll show it to you more here. This portion will be profiled in LAO view, whereas this septum will be profiled in RAO view. Can you understand here? They are at right angles.
Yes, sir. Yes.
These two are at right angles, no? So this will be profiled in LAO, this will be profiled in RAO. If you have a VSD jet here, you have to do RAO. Do you understand?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So therefore you need different views for different VSDs. Now what are the types of VSDs? Now there are many classifications of VSD. I have tried the anatomical classification, which is important for surgeons and also for the interventionalists to device closure, is best understood when you understand the right ventricular part of the ventricular septum. So when you open the right ventricle, the septum looks like this: the inflow portion, apical or trabecular portion, and an outlet portion. Now they are divided by two vertical lines. Now these lines are not doesn't exist in the heart. No? These are all artificial lines drawn for our own understanding. In the natural heart, there is no distinction between this septum and this septum. They are all continuous. Okay. Now let us see. Now this is the RV surface of the ventricular septum. Now let us see how to identify different types of VSD. There are two portions of the septum. One is the majority of the septum is muscular. That includes this area, and this area. They are very thick muscular septum. Whereas this portion, this oval portion shown in the corner between tricuspid valve and the aorta is a thin membranous septum. So obviously a membranous septal defect will be located in this area. And all these are varieties of muscular VSDs. Okay, so let us see now here. Go ahead. Now don't get frightened by this picture. I'll just try to explain to you one by one. We have a number of types of VSDs. Roughly we'll divide into inflow, trabecular septum, and outflow. That's the way to remember. Inflow septum, trabecular septum, and outflow septum. Okay. Now inflow septum has one inflow very close to the tricuspid valve and one part of the inflow septum a little towards the apex. So we will call this the inflow septum or the inlet septum, and this is called the inlet VSD. Typically AV canal VSD is located just below the tricuspid valve. This is called the inlet VSD. This is called the inlet muscular VSD. Now, what is the difference in muscular VSD and other VSD? Muscular VSD will have muscle on all sides of the border, whereas this one will have tricuspid valve on one border. Therefore, this is the inlet VSD, this is a inlet muscular VSD. Now, when you come to the trabecular septum, you can have a apical trabecular septum, a mid-trabecular septum, and an anterior trabecular septum. So depending on that, you name the VSD: anterior muscular VSD, mid-muscular VSD, and apical muscular VSD. This is also called as subaortic muscular VSD, below the aorta here, subaortic muscular VSD. Then you go to the outflow septum. The VSD which is located just below the pulmonary valve is called the subpulmonic VSD. One border is formed by the valve. So it's not a muscular VSD. It's one border is formed by the valve. It's a subpulmonic VSD. These are muscular VSDs in the outlet septum. Muscular VSDs in the outlet septum. The same colors have shown here. But here the orientation, this is a simple line diagram to make you understand. But in the real heart, it's a little more complicated. Now these two VSDs are located right at the back of the heart. This is the inlet VSD below the tricuspid valve, and this is the inlet muscular VSD. It's right at the back of the septum. Then in the middle portion of the septum, you have subaortic muscular VSD, mid-muscular VSD, apical muscular VSDs. And in the outlet septum, you have subpulmonic VSD and you have a muscular outlet VSD. Now one VSD I have left out, that is the membranous VSD. That is in the corner between the tricuspid valve and the aortic valve, here. That's a bit complicated, I know, to understand in one figure. So inlet septum, AV canal type of VSD, muscular VSD. Trabecular septum, subaortic muscular VSD, mid-muscular VSD, apical muscular VSD. Outlet septum, subpulmonic VSD, muscular VSD. In addition, there is a membranous VSD.
So that membranous, we cannot call it as subaortic, sir?
Yeah, membranous VSD is always subaortic. See, that's why when you say subaortic, there are many subaortic VSDs. One is membranous VSD, one is a malalignment VSD of tetralogy of Fallot, and another is subaortic muscular VSD. Therefore, you have to specify it. When you report subaortic VSD, it is a very incomplete report. I never accept a report of anybody who says subaortic VSD. There is no such thing as subaortic VSD. Subaortic VSD is a group. Subaortic VSD can be a membranous VSD. It can be a subaortic muscular VSD. And there is a special type of VSD which is called malalignment VSD. I'll come to that a little later. I'll deal with tetralogy later. Okay? Shall I go to the next diagram?
Yes, sir.
I'll tell you how to differentiate on angiograms now. Now, I've taken an angiogram now. I've done a LAO cranial view to elongate the septum. Now, LAO cranial view is best used for profiling the trabecular part of the septum. If you remember, I told you inflow septum is best profiled in shallow LAO. This is not shallow LAO, this is steep LAO. Therefore, the trabecular septum is the one which is profiled here. So what do you get here? Right at the top, membranous VSD will always be visible. And then you get subaortic muscular VSD, mid-muscular VSD, and apical muscular VSD. These are the three VSD which are profiled here. A subpulmonic VSD will be falling here. We will not be able to see it because it's overlapping the LVOT. We will not be able to see it at all. This is the most common view we do for VSDs, which shows the perimembranous VSD, it shows the subaortic muscular VSD, it shows the mid-muscular and apical muscular VSDs. Subpulmonic VSD will not be seen in this view. Now, the same angiogram in relation to this, because it profiles only the trabecular septum. The VSDs in this region will not be profiled. They will be seen as a vague shadow. Now, when you go to do a shallow LAO, what happens? Shallow LAO profiles the inflow septum. Now, when you profile the inflow septum, you see the tricuspid valve. You can see the negative shadow, this negative contrast coming here. This entire thing is a tricuspid valve. And you see a large VSD coming adjacent to the tricuspid valve. Therefore, this is a inlet VSD or a AV canal type of VSD here. See, this is what I call profile. And you see the jet coming from LV to RV. You're seeing the septum right angles. So this is at the level of the tricuspid valve and the inflow VSD. On the other hand, this VSD is below, at a lower level than the tricuspid valve, in the more posterior part of the septum, and therefore this is a muscular VSD. Right on top, you see the membranous VSD, above the tricuspid valve, between the tricuspid valve and the aortic valve. See, this outlines the tricuspid valve. Can you see this? This is the outline of the tricuspid valve. So, junction between tricuspid valve and the aortic valve, the membranous VSD. At the level of the tricuspid valve, inflow VSD. Below the tricuspid valve, if it is there, it would be a inlet muscular VSD. And that's what I have shown here. Shallow LAO profiles this view. Membranous VSD. Now we want to profile subpulmonic VSD here. The best view is RAO. You can see, when you do an RAO view, you can see the dye, can see a jet going directly into the pulmonary artery without filling the RV. The RV doesn't fill at all. The dye goes straight from LV to PA. It comes from LV, from the VSD it goes straight to PA. It doesn't come into the RV cavity at all. So you don't see RV filling at all. So this subpulmonic VSD is continuous with the pulmonary valve and it's best profiled in RAO view, in this view. Of course, some anterior muscular VSDs can be profiled in this view also. So this one, for example, would also be profiled in here. But this is a subpulmonic VSD. You can see it's related to the pulmonary valve. So this summarizes the views that we generally do for a ventricular septal defect. A long axial view, People used long axial view earlier, but nowadays it's better to say what LAO and what cranial. There's nothing fixed about LAO or cranial. You just have to adjust the view and get a good profile of the septum. In one patient, you may get it at 60-30. In another patient, you may get it at 70-30. Third patient, you may get it at 75-40. You have to do trial and error. You don't know. But it is better to precisely say what LAO and what cranial. Also, if you want to, how make any difference whether it's 70 or 75 degrees when you come to reporting. All you need to say is it is steep LAO with cranial angulation. And this best for the central portion of the septum where you see the membranous VSD, where you see the subaortic muscular VSD, mid-muscular VSDs and all that. Tetralogy VSD I'll come a little later. When you do shallow LAO, earlier they used to call it hepatoclavicular view. Now LAO 30 to 45 degrees, cranial 30 to 45 degrees, or shallow LAO with cranial angle is good for AV canal defect, inlet muscular VSD, mid-muscular, and also that LV to RA shunt. These VSDs are best seen in shallow LAO cranial view. And when you do RAO view, where again it varies between 20 to 40 degrees. There's nothing religious about 20 degrees or 40 degrees. It is best position for subpulmonic VSD and anterior muscular VSDs. Now a typical plan for a VSD, one thing I must tell you, nowadays people don't do angiogram for VSD. No, echo gives such beautiful pictures that the need for angiograms has gone down except when you're doing interventions, device closure. But if I have to do an angiogram study for a VSD, this is what I would do. I would do first view, because generally in children or anybody we can give up to 4 ml per kg, and generally in children we give about 1 ml per kg per angiogram. So it's typically 3 to 4 angios per study. So I would like to do, if I'm suspecting a perimembranous or a VSD, I would like to do a steep LAO with cranial tilt, which will show me the perimembranous VSD. It will also show me muscular VSD. If I suspect inlet VSD, I will do a shallow LAO cranial. I would also do a RAO view to make sure there is no subpulmonic or anterior muscular VSD. It also gives me information about the mitral valve at the same time. And VSDs often have associated arch anomalies and PDA. And particularly if the VSD is large and there is pulmonary hypertension, a Doppler can easily miss the PDA. Therefore, a VSD study, if I am doing cath, I would always do a iotogram to look for the arch, to look for AR and look for patent ductus arteriosus. That's a typical plan. But in about 2 or 3 angios, I get all the data. Per angio, I can inject 1 to 2 ml of contrast per kg body weight. Okay. Now we go on to the next part of our topic. Yes, somebody wants to interpret this angio? Okay. Come on, start, somebody.
Sir, anyone wants to interpret or should I go on?
What's the problem? The team is not very enthusiastic today. Have they gone to sleep? My talk is so boring.
No, sir. That is very important. Sir, I'll take.
What happened to Deepthi? What happened to, what is the other name you said? I forgot.
Yes, sir, can you play, sir, again? I think they are taking time to interpret.
Okay, I don't mind playing any number of times. I just want to wake you up once in a while. I have shown this angio already to you once. This is the third time I am showing you this angio. Last 1 or 2 weeks ago also I showed you this angio.
Yes. Sir, I'll take over, sir. So this is a RV angiogram, sir, with a endole catheter.
I never do endole angiogram, Baba. How many times I have told you? We never do ventricular angio with
Sorry.
end hole. Please
Sorry.
don't keep on saying that. Very disappointing for me after 4 classes
Sorry.
that you did enjoy end hole catheter. It's a balloon tipped catheter.
Balloon
not a
tipped,
tipped
yes,
classical
yes.
Berman angio catheter.
Yes.
Okay, transvenous femoral catheter placed in the right ventricle. Go on.
Yes, sir. With a slight shallow LAO, sir. And since the heart is slightly overlapping with the
No
diaphragm, sir.
reason. Give me report. No explanation now.
Okay, sir.
Yes. Shallow
So can
LAO and?
Yes, sir. So can you play, sir?
Yeah, sure. Again? I'll freeze it now in the best frame.
Yes, sir.
Oh, the label has come. Now it's. Oh, come on, at least now you describe it, no, properly.
Yes, sir. Yes. So it's.
The tetralogy, everybody is supposed to know. It's not a pediatric question.
Yes, sir. So perimembranous VSD, sir, malaligned. That's all.
That's not the way you report angios. No? That's the way you report angios. And VSD. Angio. Is that the most important thing you're seeing in RV angio?
Sir,
RV angio you do for what? RV angio you do for what?
For main is
RVOT, pulmonary battery, pulmonary branches.
Yes.
You don't do for VST. RV angio you don't do for VST.
Yes.
I am discussing tetralogy now. Come on.
Okay, sir.
I think we're wasting too much time. I'll just talk now. Okay, one moment. So the way this angio is to be described is a transvenous balloon-tipped angiocatheter placed in the right ventricle, shallow levo-cranial angulation. RV is hypertrophied. I can see big trabecular septum. RV contraction is normal. There is no tricuspid incompetence. The RV outflow is narrow just below the valve. It is stenosed and it is elongated. The pulmonary valve is thickened. The annulus is somewhat small. The pulmonary artery bifurcation is well profiled. The proximal RPA and LPA are very good size. If I add them up, it seems to be pretty adequate in size, at least by eyeballing. I will measure it later when I see the aorta. Then I can see the descending aorta now. I can say that addition of RPA and LPA definitely bigger than the descending aorta. Therefore, the pulmonary artery anatomy is good. There is also a VSD jet seen going from RV into LV. LV, but I will not describe the VSD anymore at this stage because VSD profile is best done from the left ventricle. And then the aortic arch is seen, it is normal. The levo phase, I see the pulmonary veins are coming back to LA. So that is the description I want. Why are you hesitating to give? Can't you see all those features are seen here? So that's the most important angio for a tetralogy of patient. To show the RV, OT, pulmonary annulus, main pulmonary artery and PA bifurcation. That's the first and foremost thing you want to show. The second most important thing you want to show in an angiogram, of course, you will show all these features by echo. I am now discussing only angios. The other thing to show is the ventricular septal defect. Now the ventricular septal defect of tetralogy is a subaortic defect, there is no doubt about it. So you can see that the LAO of LV angio shows the VSD and it is below the aortic valve, therefore it is a subaortic VSD. But there is a difference between the subaortic membranous VSD and the subaortic tetralogy VSD. If you see, normally the anterior border of the aorta is in line with the septum, should be in line. Here the aorta is overriding the septum. If you draw a line from the aorta, it goes into anterior wall of the aorta, it goes into the right ventricular outflow, right ventricular cavity. You agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So there is overriding of the aorta. Now that doesn't happen in perimembranous VSD. Both are subaortic. Here there is subaortic VSD with overriding of the aorta. Now why did that override happen? Because there is a thick infundibular septum here which was supposed to be fusing here. It was supposed to have fused here. Instead of fusing with the trabecular septum, this infundibular septum has got deviated into the anterior part. What is anterior to the LV? RVOT.
RVOT.
So that is the embryological basis of tetralogy of Fallot. The infundibular septum has deviated anteriorly and superiorly. See this muscle is infundibular septum. So the infundibular septum has deviated. Instead of inserting here, the infundibular septum has deviated anteriorly and superiorly. When it goes anteriorly and superiorly, what happens? A VSD is created because now this gap is. So there is not truly a hole in the septum. It is an improper fusion of the infundibular septum with the trabecular septum. The other thing which happens is this infundibular septum is encroaching into the RVOT, and that is the cause of infundibular stenosis. So the two most important feature of tetralogy is malaligned VSD and subpulmonic obstruction. Now in fact you see that in RAO view beautifully. See this? This is the infundibular septum. This tongue-like thing is infundibular septum. It deviated anteriorly and it goes superiorly. It deviated from here, it goes anteriorly superiorly, and therefore it produces a narrowing of the right ventricular outflow tract and it produces malaligned VSD. So I've told you three types of subaortic VSD now. One is subaortic VSD with overriding aorta. That is malaligned VSD seen in tetralogy of Fallot. The other one is subaortic VSD in the perimembranous septum. There is no override of aorta. The VSD lies in the angulation between the tricuspid valve and the aortic valve. And the third variety is a subaortic muscular VSD, which will be located here. Below the edge here, it will be located here. Therefore, it will be surrounded by muscle on all sides. Is that clear now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, subaortic VSD of tetralogy is also profiled in the long axis view. So, whether it is perimembranous VSD or subaortic tetralogy VSD or subaortic muscular VSD or mid-muscular VSD, they are all profiled in the long axis view. Therefore, that is the first angiogram I always do in a case of VSD. Okay?
Okay.
Yes or no? Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Now, the other important anatomy in the pulmonary, in the tetralogy you have to show is the pulmonary anatomy. When you do RV angio in AP view, what happens is there is overlap between the cavity and the outflow, because you see that the pulmonary artery is going from front to back in almost a horizontal position. So when you do an AP view angio, they are overlapping. So you cannot profile the pulmonary valve, main pulmonary artery and all that. Therefore, you have to give cranial tilt. When you give cranial tilt, you can see the length of the pulmonary artery. You see, here you don't see the length of the pulmonary artery. Here you see the length of the pulmonary artery and RVOT. And you can even see the bifurcation. There is the LP and RP is going behind the aorta here. And this is what you get when you do cranial tilt. Can you see this? You see a beautiful view of the RVOT. You see the pulmonary annulus. And you see the thickened doming pulmonary valve. And you see the beautiful bifurcation. Right. So cranial tilt is very, very important to show the bifurcation and RVOT. Now you can do cranial tilt in AP view, as it is shown here. Here it has been done in an AP view, or you can do it in a LAO view. This is shallow LAO and again cranial tilt. Shallow LAO cranial. Again it shows the pulmonary outflow, and you cannot go steep LAO. Once you go steep LAO, you won't be able to see the RV very well. Therefore, shallow LAO is cranial. This shows again the PA bifurcation. Now, whether in a given patient this will work or this will work, we don't know. You have to judge the patient. Some patients this will be better, and some patients this will be better. What you need is cranial tilt and some degree of LAO angulation, mild LAO angulation. Did you understand that? Now, sometimes RPA, no, you have to see LPA and you have to see RPA both. And sometimes in AP crania you will be able to see both. Sometimes in LAO you will be able to see the LPA, but RPA is not very well seen. In that case, even a AP may show the RPA very well. Or sometimes you may have to do a RAO view. For example, here RPA is seen best in AP view, but here we have done a right lateral, and you see the beautiful view of the LPA here. Sorry, RPA here. Or sometimes you may have to do RAO view like this here. This RPA is hypoplastic compared to the other pulmonary artery, and you have to do an extreme RAO to profile it. Otherwise, this was hidden behind the right atrium. So, extreme RAO is profiling. So different degrees of AP cranial tilt, different degrees of LAO and RAO are needed to show the entire PA branch anatomy. The purpose of tetralogy cath is to show the RVOT and pulmonary artery anatomy. That is the purpose number one. Second one is VSD. Okay, now VSD is very often seen on echo. It's only the pulmonary artery branches which we have doubts always. Therefore, I think the RV angio is more important than the LV angio. Sometimes we may have to do caudal tilt. For example, here the cranial tilt is showing the PA bifurcation very well. But in a given case, the bifurcation, sometimes you may get overlap, and here you get a caudal tilt. And you can see this. Can you see the bifurcation stenosis here? You can see the arteries in the hilum are so big, but the confluence is so stenosed here. In AP view, the main pulmonary artery will overlap here. Okay? In AP view, this will overlap, so you won't be able to make out. In cranial view also, sometimes you may not be able to, because proximal LP and RPA overlap the main pulmonary artery. So now you have a caudal angio. This is a laid back angio. So the main pulmonary artery goes anteriorly and the branches are come posteriorly. So this is a laid back angio for proximal pulmonary. Therefore, you may have to do different degrees of cranial and caudal tilt. So this is what we may have to do. For example, if you want to do RVOT, MPA and jointures, you can do AP with cranial or shallow LAO with cranial, 15-20 degrees with cranial. If you want to see only the RVOT and pulmonary artery like valvular PS annular, you can do a lateral. If you want to see the RA right ventricular outflow tract and RPA, RAO angio can be done. For the main pulmonary artery, again LAO with cranial is the best. I showed you cranial angio. You can also do sometimes caudal if you want to show the LPA. Now mind you cannot do all these angio in everybody. In that case, you will be injecting 250 ml of contrast. It's not possible to do everything in everybody. Therefore, you always use non-invasive data, echo data, CT angio data, whatever is available, and build a mental image of the anatomy and do only minimum necessary angio to clarify the data. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So a typical, therefore I am doing an angio of a tetralogy of patient. I assume that I do not have any echo information. If I had no echo information, no CT angio information, this is what I will do. I will do a shallow LAO with cranial tilt, which will tell me RVOT, RVOT, TR, main pulmonary artery and bifurcation. If I have any doubt about pulmonary artery annular, I may do lateral view, but otherwise if this shows annular, I will not do lateral view. Then I will do a PA injection, LAO cranial, to show, if I want to see LPA, I will do LAO cranial. If I want to do RPA, see the RPA, I will do an RAO. So one or two of these angios among this, maybe one LV angio, LAO with cranial tilt, show the VSD and additional VSDs. And finally, of course, I need an aortic angio to make sure that the coronary artery is not crossing the right ventricular outflow tract, and also make sure that the aorta is not diseased, no AR and all that. So a typical tetralogy angio means I will do an RV angio, one PA angio, or two RV angios and one LV angio and one aortic angio. If any of these information is already available, then I will limit myself to one or two angios. That's all. Okay, so that is the theory. Now you guys have to interpret some angios for me quickly. They are all still pictures, they are not angios. Okay, now turn by turn, come on quickly. What view, what finding? Obviously it is a LV angio.
Sir, LAO view, sir. Which is showing LV and.
Sorry, sir, I didn't hear you.
Catheter force is, sir.
Yeah. Say that again.
Sir, it is a LV angio done in LAO view, sir. LAO cranial view.
LAO cranial, yes. Because you see the spine here and LV is overlapping the spine. Shallow LAO or steep LAO? What would you say? See, the entire RV and RA are here. Most of the heart is in
steep
front.
LAO.
Steep LAO with
Steep
cranial.
LAO, sir.
And it is cranial because the septum is elongated.
Sir, and venous catheter that is passing from RA to maybe left atrium into the left ventricle, sir.
Okay, the catheter has gone
PFO.
through RA, LA and mitral valve.
Through the PFO, left atrium, yes. Through the mitral valve into the left ventricle, sir.
Yes.
And there is a ventricular septal defect that is mostly in trabecular region, sir, mid-muscular or trabecular region.
Okay, why is it not subaortic muscular?
It is appearing a little lower, sir.
That's all I have here. I think its image is cut off there. Anyway, I'll show you. See, this is the aorta, Can you see this aorta here? So a membranous VSD and a tetralogy VSD will be here. A subaortic muscular VSD will be here. This is so far away from the, this is the subaortic muscular septum. This is definitely the mid-muscular VSD. Yes. And this will be the apical muscular VSD. So this is a typical mid-muscular VSD. Okay. Okay, somebody else can answer this.
Sir, it's a shallow LO view.
Yes. I showed you this angio a little while ago. No, I'm repeating it. Can you see? I told you this is the tricuspid valve which is profiled shallow LAO cranial cells, inlet VSD. It's coming. This is the level of the tricuspid valve. This is the perimembranous septum. This is the inflow muscular VSD region here. So this is the large AV canal defect at the level of the tricuspid valve. What do you see here? Okay, so many arrows are there, man. Come on, not very difficult.
Swiss cheese.
Huh? No, don't say Swiss cheese. Multiple muscular VSD, multiple VSDs. How many VSDs are there? You ignore all the small arrows, okay? How many VSDs are there?
Two VSDs, sir.
Two large VSDs.
two VSDs. Everybody convinced two VSDs?
One is near apex, another is near mid-muscular portion.
How did the catheter enter LV?
Through the aorta into the retrograde aortic catheter, sir. Marked pigtail catheter. Arch of aorta to the ascending aorta into the
Come on, man. You people are sleeping.
aorta into the LV.
You're not. How did the catheter enter the the LV? Where is the aorta attached?
Through VSD, sir.
Huh? Aorta is placed over LV or over RV?
RV. So
Then how did it enter the LV? So that means there is another VSD here, no?
subaortic VSD.
How did you say two VSDs? 1, 2 and there's a huge VSD here. This aorta is placed over RV, no? So the catheter is going to RV and then coming through the VSD into LV. So how many VSDs are there?
Three VSD.
So what's the problem? What's difficult about that? If there one muscular VSD here, one muscular VSD here, and this is the main VSD, and you're not reporting that. The aorta is connected to RV, and therefore the catheter has gone through the aorta, RV, and then through the VSD into LV. Probably a double outlet right ventricle, multiple VSDs, one subaortic and one multiple muscular VSDs. Is that clear or not?
Yes, sir.
I don't know, the response is very, very sluggish. Am I not clear? What is the difficulty? There must multiple VSDs, there's one big VSD here. And there are two VSDs because this catheter has gone from aorta to right ventricle, then the VSD, then it got into LV. Okay?
Yes, sir. Okay, sir.
Right. What VSD is this?
Perimembranous VSD. Very
good. Because it's a subaortic VSD, is adjacent to the aortic valve, and there is no override of the aorta. Can you see the anterior border of the aorta? If you draw a straight coming to the septum, there is no override. Yes? Therefore, this is a perimembranous subaortic VSD. And what is this? What have they marked as an arrow?
RVOT.
No, RVOT doesn't come there. Come on. We have been discussing RVOT anatomy.
Septal valve.
RVOT is lying here.
Yes, sir, at the back. Sorry.
What is this?
Septal tricuspid valve.
No. Well, septal. Why they have marked it? No. It's aneurysm of the membranous septum. Can you see there's a spherical shadow here? The septal tissue often forms an aneurysmal sac. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Okay, this is nothing. Do we have time? Okay, one more quickly. I have shown you some angios here. Okay, these two are normal. Okay, I've shown you for comparison. This is RAO normal, LV angio. This is RAO normal. Again, this is diastole, this is systole. Now this is the patient's RAO systole, this is RAO diastole. Tell me what is the finding. I gave you a normal angio for comparison.
Dynamic LVOT obstruction, sir.
Do you do RAO view for dynamic obstruction?
LAO.
And I can tell you this patient had no gradient. Okay. And do you
AV canal defect.
do you get gradient in this outflow? Wide open. This is systole, I told you, no? Will you get a gradient in this outflow?
No, sir.
Then what do you say LVOT gradient?
Swan neck deformity, sir. AV canal defect.
What deformity?
Swan neck deformity.
It's actually goose neck deformity. It's not swan neck.
Goose neck. Goose neck deformity.
Have you guys heard of goose neck deformity? Others? Okay, can you explain?
AV.
Can you explain? What is goose neck deformity?
So normally,
okay, I mean it's not your. I know in AV canal defect that there is a slight difference in the orientation of the AV valve, and therefore it's a finding in diastole. In systole, there's not much difference. Can you see this? This LVOT and this LVOT not much different. In diastole, you can see that the AV valve opens out into the outflow tract, and the LV outflow appears elongated and stretched out on the AV valve. So this is like the back of a goose. Okay, whereas in the normal diastole, the mitral valve does not give that appearance. So this is a typical finding of AV canal defect. Whether primum ASD or complete AV canal defect, you will get this. Therefore, if you do a RAO view for this patient, you remember I showed you one inlet VSD here. This patient, if you do RAO view, you will get something like this. Okay, this is called the goose neck deformity. They're typical of AV canal defect. I don't know whether they will ask you, but nowadays spotters are also being kept. So just remember goose neck of the LV outflow. In LAO also you can make out the goose neck. Actually, can you see this? Now, actually, I have frozen a frame from this. If you see, the AV valve is here. This white thing is the AV valve, no? Negative shadow of the AV valve, and the LVOT formed a arch deviated course over the AV valve in AV canal defect. In comparison, LAO of a normal LV. Can you see this? How the LVOT looks in normal and how it looks in AV canal defect. There is no stenosis, there is no gradient, but the shape is different. Therefore, this is goose neck in RAO view. This is goose neck in LAO view, and this is LAO of a normal ventricle. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Right, I think I'll stop here.
So, sir, do you have more spotters, sir?
Yeah, I have plenty of more.
Okay, sir.
I can go on for many hours. That's not one, but I think more than 1.5 hours is too much in one session.
So, spotter again, can we discuss, sir? Next class, whatever are remaining or important spotters, sir.
Your spotters angio or spotters? What are you talking about?
Spotter angios only, sir.
Yeah, we got plenty.
Yes, sir. That is one thing, sir. And the other thing, sir, I have sent you a message, no, sir, regarding that clinical station performance, sir.
Yeah, I thought I'll go through it. How to do procedures and all, no?
Means
That one.
clinical skill performance, sir. They have kept 30 marks for that, but
Okay.
they have not mentioned. They have not mentioned which all clinical skill. But we are anticipating some things, sir. I messaged you, sir. What all we are anticipating.
Okay.
So
Yeah, they're
anything
all
else?
they're all very important.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So
Okay.
that we should not. Yes, sir. We should not make minor mistakes or major mistakes. That's what we wanted.
Yeah. A mistake in a simple thing is considered major. A mistake in a
Yes.
mistake in a major thing is considered as minor.
Yes. So next class, sir, some spotters and other things also we can have, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
Like this. Okay, sir.
Yeah, somebody has put a note there. What is that? No. Okay. Right. Any questions? I know it's a bit too much for one session, but I think you must remember VSD and tetralogy. If you remember, I think that's good enough for your views of LA angiogram. But you must know some spotters and basic principles of imaging. No? How to get a good image, how to avoid overexposure, how to avoid magnification, how to measure all those things. You must know. You are doing left and right PTCA, and if you don't know how to correct for magnification, it doesn't look good at all. Just because QCA is there, you must know how QCA works, because QCA, if one day if it doesn't work, no, you won't know how to do PTCA. Okay? Right.
Okay, sir.
No questions, I'm winding up. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.